This is the Mercedes-Benz EQA250, which not only represents the entry point into Mercedes-Benz's EQ range of electric vehicles, but is also one of the most affordable ways to get into a compact crossover by Mercedes-Benz. At 286,000 ringgit, it naturally goes up against competitors like the BMW iX1, which is expected to be launched in our market very soon. But on top of that, at this price point, it also goes head-to-head with vehicles like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 as well as Kia's EV6. But with a 66 kilowatt-hour battery, a cruising range of 425 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, and a claimed DC fast charging rate from 10 to 80% in just 30 minutes, does the EQA have enough to differentiate itself as a premium offering within the segment, or are you better off being pragmatic, overlooking the badge, and going with one of the Korean EVs with more range? My name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, this is MalaysianMotoring, and if you'd like to see the answer to that question, be sure to hit subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Let's get into it. Now, the EQA is essentially the electric version of Mercedes-Benz's GLA, and design-wise you can definitely see the similarities. However, because this is an EQ car, there are some unique features to this to make it a little bit more aerodynamic, which is very important when you're talking about maximizing range. So for starters, up front, the grille is now completely closed off with a couple of bars across because this is the AMG line pack. So you do get these two sort of chrome wings. You also get a more aggressive front bumper with these large inlets which actually do something. They create a curtain of air that covers the front wheels again to help the car maximize its range. Now, flanking that closed-off grille, you will find a couple of multi-beam LED headlights. These are not the most sophisticated headlights that you can get from Mercedes-Benz, but Mercedes-Benz Malaysia has spec'd this car to be sort of upper mid-range, and so we get the upper mid-range headlights. Now, another unique feature of the EQA versus the GLA is its LED light signature, where the DRLs now come across like this, but when you have the positioning lights on, it actually creates a light bar that goes all the way across, and at night it makes the car look rather distinctive. Now, down the side, this car runs on 19-inch AMG line alloy wheels wrapped in Continental Eco Contact 6 tyres. Now, these are Eco Contact 6 MOs, MO meaning that these are official tyres made for Mercedes-Benz by Continental, and as a result it reduces rolling resistance again to maximize range, and it also prioritizes quietness because in an electric vehicle obviously you don't want that much road noise. Down the side, there's very little to suggest that this is any different from the GLA aside from this fender badge here which says EQA. Aside from that, everything down the side looks rather similar. You also get some roof rails up here again to signify that this is a crossover, although I'm not all too sure if these are functional because I can't seem to find a screw down point, but feel free to grill your Mercedes-Benz sales advisor about that. Now, at the rear, the GLA similarities continue. As you can see, the light signature looks rather similar, except now, in order to fit the EQ style rear light bar, they have moved the number plate from a recess up here on the tailgate to down here on the boot lid. And again, as a result, it creates a signature that is very distinctive, especially at night. Now, what I do find interesting with this design is the fact that you can see Mercedes-Benz designers having to sort of balance between Mercedes-Benz SUV design and Mercedes-Benz EQ design, because the SUVs have these squircles, but then EQs have light bars. So you can see that they had to sort of deconstruct the inner squircle to make way for the light bar. It's just something that I find fun. Now, back here you will find the badging EQA250. As you can see, there's also no 4MATIC badge, and that's because this car is ultimately front-wheel drive. This is obviously better for range, it's more efficient in terms of packaging, but of course if you're looking for a compact crossover from Mercedes-Benz with all-pore traction, especially if you're driving long distances or you want the security of all-pore traction, then unfortunately the EQA is not going to be able to do that for you. The other thing the EQA is not going to be able to do is provide as much space as you would get from a GLA. The boot has been raised ever so slightly in order to make way for some things, and as you can see underneath the boot floor there is very little space. It's just for emergency uses and some other like tool kits and stuff like that. You've obviously notice this bag here, which sits in a little pouch with a little strap to keep it in place. This is where you keep your Type 2 to Type 2 charging cable, which comes with the car. Very interestingly, Mercedes-Benz Malaysia does not sell this with a 3-pin granny charger, which I think is a little bit strange given the fact that a 3-pin plug can be very useful in emergency situations where you cannot find a Type 2 charger, an AC charger or a DC charger. Now, the tailgate is electrically operated, as I mentioned earlier, or rather as I demonstrated earlier, and accessing it is through the badge. All very simple, all very easy to use. Now, the similarities with the GLA continue inside. You'll find the same interior architecture as we've seen from other compact Mercedes-Benz models. Now, weirdly, these cars are designed and sort of targeted at a younger audience, more style focused, and yet there's nowhere for me to put my sunglasses, which is strange. Now, in terms of the interface, everything in here is very, very familiar. You get the same MBUX system with its incredibly easy and intuitive display and interface, which is very, very easy to use. You get another digital instrument cluster up ahead of you, which again is very customizable, as we've seen from Mercedes-Benz's before. But the EQA250 comes with a full color heads-up display, which shows me things like my speed, my advanced driver assist features, as well as my consumption. Although again, I can actually manipulate 3 panels on my heads-up display to show me whatever I want. Unfortunately, we do not get the augmented reality navigation system that you get in the newer MBUX cars, so we'll just consider that for what it is. In terms of interior quality, I would argue that this car is very solidly built. Now, the EQA is fully imported from Germany, unlike the GLA, which is built in Pekan. Although honestly, in terms of interior quality, it is honestly just as good. Nothing in here squeaks or rattles, nothing moves. Everything feels as reassuringly well built as anything else that you get from Mercedes-Benz, which is nice, I guess. These seats are done up in a Sensatec, sort of like a microfiber fabric with some leather on the side, although I suspect this isn't real leather because Mercedes-Benz never puts real leather on their affordable cars. But you do get nice contrasting red stitching about the place, which does make the interior feel a little bit more upmarket. In terms of other interior accoutrements, we do get the full interior ambient lighting system, but we only get a basic hi-fi system, no Burmester audio in here. If you want that, you have to go for the GLA 35 AMG. But overall, it is relatively comfortable, and the front seats are both electrically adjustable with 3-stage memory on both sides and 3-stage seat heating, because that's important. We don't get tint, but we get seat heating. Now, in the back of the GLA is a bit of a mixed bag, because although we don't get tint, we do get rear aircon vents, which certainly make a big difference in our market. You also get a USB-C port down here, and you get an armrest which has a couple of cup holders, and of course, if you would like to put child seats back here, there are ISOFIX mounts on either side, and these rear seats fold 40-20-40 for maximum flexibility. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have noticed, but the problem that I have with this car is the fact that in order to turn this from a GLA to an EQA, they've had to put the batteries underneath the floor, and as a result, they've had to raise the floor itself. I noticed this when I drove the car, as I have to sit a lot higher in this car than I did in the GLA. And back here, where I obviously cannot adjust the rear seat height, if I put my feet sort of in an efficient position here like this, my knees and the bottoms of my thighs have absolutely no support at all. And even if I stretch out to as best I can with this seat set up in my driving position, I still don't have a lot of under-thigh support, which means I ultimately have to sort of sit at an angle like this, or do something with my legs. That tells me that this might not be the best car for long-distance drives. I can only imagine that passengers sat back here for more than a couple of hours may complain about some degree of thigh strain. But you know, at least there's aircon vents, right? So, anyway, I guess it's good that this car only has a range of about 350 kilometers in the real world. But talking about range, we should hop back in the driver's seat, where I believe things are going to be a little bit more surprising. But before we get to the driving, I nearly forgot, we have to talk about the powertrain. So under the bonnet, you can tell that because this car was built off of an existing ICE platform, we don't get a front boot. Instead, you get all of this stuff, which is not very nice to look at. Now, beneath all this nonsense, deep in there, you will find a single electric motor which produces 190 PS and 375 Newton meters of torque. Obviously, there is no gearbox, which means this car can go from 0 to 100 in 8.9 seconds, although mind you, this is a 2-ton machine. Now, powering this motor is a 66.5 kilowatt hour liquid cooled battery, which provides a WLTP range of up to 429 kilometers on a single charge, although realistically you'll be looking at more like 350 to 370 at most. Now, this car can charge on an AC charge at up to 11 kilowatts, which means you can go from dead to full in under 6 hours, although this car can also DC charge at up to 100 kilowatts, which means you can do 10 to 80% in about 32 minutes. Now, with that in mind, the EQA is definitely made to be more of a city car with a sort of range which allows you to go for several days at a time without having to charge. Although that said, if you do want to try driving long distance, I do suspect that 100 kilowatt DC charging limit might be a bit of an issue, as well, there aren't that many chargers at that speed, and even if there are, it's going to take a little bit of time. Half an hour is not an insignificant amount of time, and when you consider this car goes up against vehicles like 800-volt architecture vehicles like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, which can charge up to 350 kilowatts and do the same 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes at a charger that's fast enough, it becomes a bit of a sore point. But at least there's a gas strap for the bonnet. Now, before we get into the actual driving, I'd like to apologize because in the intro I said that this car is 287,000. Actually, it's 278, so it's a little bit cheaper. But that doesn't detract or add to, in fact, the way this car drives. Now, under the bonnet is a small electric motor which produces 190 PS and 375 Newton meters of torque. Power goes to only the front wheels, unfortunately. And the 0 to 100 time is all right. It's not blisteringly fast, but of course, because it's an electric vehicle, you get all 375 Newton meters instantly. So that is still quite a lot of fun. Now, of course, this is a 2-ton compact SUV, which means it's not going to drive it's not going to drive with the same agility as you get from the Mercedes-Benz GLA. But that said though, Mercedes-Benz has done a pretty good job in terms of tuning the suspension for this car, because it is neither crashy nor is it particularly floaty, and it seems to manage the weight pretty well. And in terms of grip, again, those Eco Contact 6 MO tires seem to be doing a pretty good job because, well, this car hasn't washed wide once, despite the fact that it weighs about as much as a small moon. And in terms of driving it itself, it's actually a really pleasant place to be. I've given compact Mercedes-Benzes a lot of flack over the years because they just lack the kind of refinement and isolation that you'd expect from something carrying the three-pointed star. But somehow the EQA manages it very well. Of course, there is no engine noise to complain about because there is no engine. But in terms of road noise, it seems to be very well suppressed too, which leads me to believe that this fully imported EQA must have more sound deadening than the locally assembled GLA and A-Class saloon. But that's just a theory. And of course, I'm sure that again, those special tires are a little bit quieter than usual, but all of that contributes to a very pleasant, quiet, serene driving experience. Of course, when you push past the national speed limit, you are going to get a tiny little bit of wind whistle from the wing mirrors, but it truly isn't all that bad, and I could imagine myself doing very, very long distances in this car without issue. Now, what might stop me from doing that, however, is the range. Now, throughout the period that I've had this car, and I've driven it for about 5 days, done about 500 kilometers thereabouts, 600 kilometers thereabouts, I've had a few problems with this, and that's mostly to do with range. So for starters, with this car fully charged, when I charged it, it said that it had a range of about 364 kilometers on a full charge, mind. Of course, this is a 66 kilowatt hour battery, so this is naturally going to be smaller than mass market EVs like the Hyundai Kona EV Max, and of course the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. But 364 kilometers on 100% charge isn't exactly confidence inspiring. And then there is the fact that the consumption on this car is incredibly high. So if I just go through the whatever here, oh sorry, I've done 521 kilometers and 13 hours behind the wheel with an average speed of 39 kilometers an hour, and I've been doing 24.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. This is significantly higher than what I've seen from other EVs, particularly from the Korean brands. Additionally, because this car consumes so much, it does mean that whatever range it says it has, like right now it's saying about I have 91, 92 kilometers an hour, if I decide to drive a little bit faster or a little bit more aggressively, I can't really trust that range estimate. I have never had this issue in any of the other Korean EVs I've driven, nor have I had this issue in the BMW iX. And you can watch all those reviews on the channel. They're all mostly live, except for the Kona, perhaps. I'm not sure. Just check. So, because of that, it means that driving this has been a little bit more nerve-wracking than any other electric vehicle that I've driven so far, because it feels like I can't fully bank on the range that the car is giving me. Additionally, we have to talk about charging. So this car charges AC at up to 11 kilowatts. This is normal with most of these slightly more expensive EVs, and so that means that this car can juice up from 0 to 100% in about 6, 7 hours, thereabouts, or 8 hours, something like that, but it's definitely less than 10. In terms of DC charging, this car can accept up to 100 kilowatts, which means 10 to 80% can be completed in about 32 minutes, thereabouts. Now, the thing about Mercedes-Benz, or the unique selling point with Mercedes-Benz EQ vehicles at the moment, is that for the time being, until the end of 2023, you can enjoy free charging at Mercedes-Benz dealerships across the country. Now, according to the CEO, Ms. Sagri Sardin, who I spoke to during the launch of the EQE, she says that because of Mercedes-Benz's network of chargers, it means that you can drive the length and breadth of the country relying solely on Mercedes-Benz Jom Charge facilities. Now, to put that to the test, I decided that I wanted to charge my car at a dealership. And charging at a dealership was truly the most seamless experience I've ever had. If I go to any of the other competing brands, I won't mention which ones, be it premium or mass market, the routine is normally the same. I drive up, I find a charger, I have to step out. If the charger is, not shaded, then I'm going to get very warm, or if it's raining, I'm going to get very wet. I have to muck about with the cable, plug the car in, and then at one particular dealership, I then have to go in and find a sales advisor to actually activate the charger. With Mercedes-Benz, it was remarkably different. I showed up to the dealership, I pulled up the car to this valet counter they had. They directed me to go inside. I spoke to a receptionist who then took my key, showed me where the lounge was, and by the time I sat down with a coffee in front of me, my car was already charging. And then about 20 minutes later, a service advisor came up to me to let me know that my car was fully charged and they had brought it back to the front of the building and it was ready for me to leave. This might sound like a lot of faffery and a little bit unnecessary to some of you, and I admit that it is technically unnecessary. I can just plug my own car in, I'm not an idiot. But that said though, there are two reasons why this is important. Number one, it was a truly premium experience. I didn't have to fuss and worry with the ridiculousness of charging, all the complications that comes with. And more importantly, by going back to Mercedes-Benz and by relying on Mercedes-Benz to charge my electric car, it means that there are now more opportunities for me to connect with the brand, with its products, and with its staff, creating a very positive ownership experience. And as a result of this ease of usage, it does mean that I may be more easily persuaded to buy another Mercedes-Benz EQ in the future. That sort of customer retention is something that I believe that Mercedes-Benz Malaysia has absolutely nailed, and it is because of little things like this. The same praise cannot be said, however, of the Mercedes Me Connect concierge services, however. Because when I had to drive into the middle of KL with about 50% battery, I was just curious as to where I might be able to charge my car. I called the concierge to ask if any of the Mercedes-Benz dealerships in Kuala Lumpur, of which I believe there are 3 or 4, if any of them have a DC fast charger for me to use. And then about 5 minutes later, the executive calls me back to let me know that the only DC fast charger, according to them, is at Hapseng Star, Kinrara. That, I know for a fact, is not true, because Cycle and Carriage also has a DC fast charger in Mutiara Damansara and also at their facilities in PJ. There are also DC fast chargers at Mercedes-Benz dealerships in Setia Alam, as well as across the rest of the country. Which means that Mercedes-Me concierge services are not aware of the facilities that they're supposed to be aware of. And if I cannot rely on Mercedes-Benz concierge to tell me the information that I need in order to make my ownership experience more seamless, then who else am I supposed to be reliant on? That was a really sore point for me. Between that and the rather ridiculous range, it made me really question as to whether or not the EQA is something that I can genuinely recommend. You see, although in theory this would be a fantastic car for urban driving, particularly as I'm doing now, stuck in traffic with the level 2 semi-autonomy basically doing the majority of the work with me just paying attention and making sure that it's doing everything as it's supposed to, it does mean that you will run out of range a lot faster than usual, which means if you are like me and you cannot charge at home or you can't charge at work and you're reliant on public chargers, it means that you will have to visit a charger about twice a week if your daily commute is about 50 kilometers, if not more. Generally, I drive about 100 kilometers a day, which is why I've had to charge this car as frequently as I have, because it is also very terrifying to see your range well below 100 kilometers after a little bit of driving. And so because of that, it means that at this price point, if you can't charge at home and you can't charge at work, and you're trying to maybe visit a charger once a week for like a quick DC top-up, then you will most likely be better served with something like a Hyundai Kona EV Max if you're pinching pennies, or if you can stretch a little bit, maybe the Kia EV6. These are both cars, in the case of the EV6 at least, that can charge faster, offer better range, and still offer roughly the same amount of technology and convenience within. And in terms of interior quality and in terms of material quality inside, truly they are not that far off what I'm getting from this Mercedes. However, if you're looking at a second vehicle to use for your daily commute and so on, it's not your primary car, you can charge at home or you can charge at work, and you never really have to worry about the range, or if you're just looking for a little runabout car for you to run errands in, for example, then this EQA is fantastic. Because truly, as a small, compact electric vehicle, the EQA really does seem to set the tone for what a premium ownership experience of an EV should be. And that is something that has really impressed me. Of course, I would also argue that if you need to use the rear seats more often or you need a little bit more boot space, please consider the Volvo XC40 EV. That was a little bit of an aggressive stop, because that car does a lot better in terms of hauling people around in the back. But if you're not a brand snob, then consider the Kia EV6, because that is truly what I believe to be the most complete EV package currently available. And if you want something that is stylish and you really aren't that worried about range, consider the Mazda CX-30, which, although it only has a 200-kilometer range, if you can charge at home or at work, that's more than enough. But overall, the EQA is a little divisive. I can't recommend this car as easily as I could various other EVs at around about this price point. But I do appreciate the premiumness in here, which gives me a huge sense of confidence and excitement to try other EQ vehicles in the future. And if you'd like to see that, please let us know in the comment section below, and then I will screen cap that and go and badger the executive from Mercedes-Benz. But in any case, that's been our review of the 2023 Mercedes-Benz EQA250 AMG line. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe. Jangan bodoh.